Imagine for a moment that you are standing in line at your favorite coffee shop. You order a large latte, extra foam, maybe a dash of cinnamon. As you reach for your wallet, a tiny nagging voice in the back of your head whispers, "Should you really be buying this? If you saved this $5 and invested it, you'd be a millionaire in 40 years." For decades, this has been the primary gospel of personal finance. We are told that wealth is a result of suffering. We are told that being good with money means saying no to the things that bring us joy today in exchange for a distant, foggy security tomorrow. We've been conditioned to feel guilty about our lattes, our vacations, and our new shoes. But what if that entire narrative is not just exhausting, but fundamentally wrong? In his seminal book, I Will Teach You to Be Rich, Ramit Sethi offers a radical counterproposal. He suggests that a rich life isn't about the math of restriction, it's about the psychology of intentionality. Ramit doesn't want you to stop buying lattes. In fact, he wants you to buy as many lattes as you want, provided you have a system in place that handles the big, important things automatically. This book matters today because we are living in an era of information overload and decision fatigue. We have 1,000 banking options, 10,000 investment strategies, and a million voices telling us how to live. Most of us respond to this complexity by doing nothing at all. We freeze. Ramit's philosophy is the antidote to that paralysis. He moves us away from the cheap mindset, which is about the lowest price, and toward a frugal mindset, which is about the highest value. Throughout this journey, we are going to explore 4 core themes that serve as the pillars of his system. Automation over willpower, why your system should be smarter than you are. The 85% solution, why getting started is more important than being perfect. Conscious spending, the art of ruthlessly cutting costs on things you don't love to spend extravagantly on the things you do. And the big wins, shifting focus from $5 questions to $50,000 questions. We aren't here to learn how to balance a checkbook or stare at spreadsheets. We are here to build a psychological framework that allows money to stop being a source of anxiety and start being a tool for freedom. It's time to stop asking, "What can I afford?" and start asking, "What do I want my life to look like?" Let's begin.
Chapter 1: The Credit Card Trap: Optimizing the System. If you could make one phone call today that would save you $1,000, $5,000, or even $20,000 over the next few years, would you do it? Most of us wouldn't, because we've been taught to view credit cards as the villains of our financial story. We see them as plastic monsters waiting to swallow us in debt. But what if the monster wasn't the card itself, but our lack of a system to master it? In the world of a rich life, credit cards are not just tools for spending. They are high-performance financial vehicles. When used correctly, they provide a layer of consumer protection that cash can never touch, free travel, and, most importantly, a credit score that acts as a silent passport to a cheaper life. The core idea here is simple. Optimize, don't demonize. Most people fall into the trap of passive participation. They get a card, they spend, they pay the minimum, and they ignore the fine print. Ramit challenges us to flip the script. Your credit score is essentially a grade for how well you handle debt, and in our society, that grade determines the interest rate on your future home or car. A difference of just 1 percentage point on a mortgage can mean the difference between retiring 5 years early or working into your 70s. But how do we deal with the existing baggage? Many of us are carrying debt that feels like a weight around our necks. Ramit's approach is refreshing because it lacks the typical moral judgment. He doesn't care why you have debt, he cares about the math of getting out. He suggests a negotiation-first strategy. Imagine calling your bank and saying, "I've been a customer for 3 years. I see that my interest rate is 19%. I'd like to lower that." Most people never try this because they assume the bank is an immovable monolith. In reality, banks are businesses that want to keep you as a customer. A simple script, a bit of polite persistence, can save you thousands in interest charges overnight. Beyond debt, there is the hidden perks layer. Did you know most credit cards offer extended warranties on your electronics or primary insurance on rental cars? We often pay for these things twice because we don't realize our plastic already covers them. By optimizing our cards, we turn a liability into a concierge. Philosophically, this chapter is about taking the offensive. It's about moving from a person who receives a bill to a person who manages a system. It's the first step in realizing that the financial world is negotiable. You are not a victim of the banks unless you choose to be a passive observer of their rules. The psychological shift here is profound. When you stop fearing your credit card and start optimizing it, you gain a sense of agency. You realize that big wins, like a 800-plus credit score, are the result of a few hours of focused work, rather than a lifetime of penny pinching. Key takeaway: credit is a tool that can either build your house or burn it down. By mastering the rules of the game and negotiating with banks, you turn your debt into a system of perks and long-term savings.
Chapter 2. Beat the Banks: Financial Infrastructure. Why is it that we spend hours researching which pair of headphones to buy, yet we happily hand over our life savings to a bank that treats us like a nuisance? Most of us are bank loyal for no other reason than our parents opened an account for us when we were 12, or there happens to be a branch on the corner of our street. We tolerate monthly maintenance fees, minimum balance requirements, and interest rates so low they are practically an insult. The core idea of this chapter is to stop being a victim of convenience and start being a customer of value. Think of your bank as the plumbing of your financial life. If the pipes are leaking in the form of $15 monthly fees or hidden overdraft protection costs, it doesn't matter how much water you pour in. You're losing ground every single day. Ramit argues that the big banks thrive on our laziness. They count on the fact that you won't bother to switch accounts, even if they are effectively stealing your money through death by 1,000 cuts. To beat the banks, you have to understand the distinction between a checking account and a savings account. In Ramit's system, the checking account is like your email inbox. Everything flows through it, but nothing stays there for long. It's a transactional hub. Your savings account, however, should be like a vault. But here is the catch. Most people keep their vault in the same building as their inbox. When you see your savings every time you log in to pay a bill, you are psychologically more likely to borrow from yourself for a weekend trip or a new gadget. Ramit suggests a psychological firewall. Keep your savings in a separate, high-yield online bank. These banks don't have the overhead of physical branches, the marble floors, and the free pens, so they can afford to pay you 10 to 20 times more interest than a traditional bank. He also introduces the concept of the no-fee personal policy. This is a mental shift. From today onward, you decide that you simply do not pay fees. If a bank charges you to keep your own money, you leave. This isn't just about the $12 a month, it's about the principle of respect. Research shows that the friction of switching banks is the #1 reason people stay in bad financial relationships. We tell ourselves it's too much work. But if you spend 3 hours switching your accounts and save $200 a year in fees, plus earn an extra $300 in interest, your hourly rate for that task was $166. That's a big win. Philosophically, this is about infrastructure. You cannot build a skyscraper on a swamp. By setting up accounts that work for you, with no fees and high interest, you're building a foundation that makes the rest of the system effortless. You are moving from a world where the bank allows you to have an account to a world where you choose to give them your business because they've earned it. Key takeaway: your bank should be a frictionless tool that costs you nothing and pays you fairly. By switching to high-yield, no-fee accounts, you plug the leaks in your financial plumbing.
Chapter 3. Get ready to invest: the fear of starting. Why do we find it so easy to spend $100 on a dinner that lasts 2 hours, but so difficult to put that same $100 into an investment account that could last a lifetime? The answer isn't laziness, it's fear. For many of us, investing feels like a shadowy club where everyone speaks a secret language of Greek letters and complex algorithms. We wait for a sign that we are ready, a bigger salary, a more stable life, or a sudden burst of financial genius. The core idea of this chapter is to kill the myth of the perfect time. Ramit argues that the single most important factor in wealth creation is not how much you invest, or even what you invest in. It's how long you stay invested. This is the magic of compound interest. Consider two people. One starts investing $200 a month at age 25 and stops at 35. The other starts at 35 and invests that same $200 every month until they retire at 65. Even though the second person invested for 30 years and the first only for 10, the person who started early will likely end up with more money. Time is the heavy lifter. When you wait to learn more, you aren't being cautious. You are paying a waiting tax that costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars. But why do we freeze? Ramit identifies a psychological barrier called analysis paralysis. We are terrified of making the wrong choice, so we choose nothing. We think we need to be like the shouting traders on TV, buying and selling every day. In reality, the most successful investors are the ones who are average, those who buy boring, broad market funds and then go outside and live their lives. This chapter introduces the ladder of investing. It's a priority list designed to remove the guesswork. The 401k match. If your employer offers a match, that is an immediate 100% return on your money. It's the only free lunch in the financial world. Debt paydown. Killing high-interest debt, like credit cards, is a guaranteed return. The Roth IRA, a way to grow your money and never pay taxes on the gains again. Philosophically, this is about lowering the bar for entry. Ramit advocates for the 85% solution. It is far better to have a good enough investment plan that you actually start today than a perfect plan that you research for another 6 months. When you open an investment account, you aren't just buying stocks, you are buying a piece of the future. You are shifting your identity from a consumer, someone who pays for the creations of others, to an owner, someone who profits from the growth of the world economy. This shift in identity is the true beginning of wealth. Key takeaway? The cost of waiting is higher than the cost of being average. By following a simple ladder of priorities, you can stop being a spectator and start owning your future. Chapter 4. Conscious Spending. The Art of Saying Yes. We have been conditioned to believe that budgeting is a form of financial penance. The word itself conjures up images of dusty spreadsheets, restriction, and a soul-crushing no to everything that makes life worth living. But Ramit Sethi flips this on its head with a concept that feels like a superpower: conscious spending. The core idea is simple but revolutionary. Spend extravagantly on the things you love, as long as you cut costs ruthlessly on the things you don't. Most people are cheap. They try to save money on everything: the cheap toilet paper, the discount flights, the generic cereal, and as a result, they feel a general sense of deprivation without actually getting rich. A conscious spender, however, has a different philosophy. If you love high-end fashion, buy the $800 jacket. If you love travel, fly business class. But, and this is the crucial part, you must be willing to live in a smaller apartment or drive a 10-year-old car to fund those passions. This is where we move away from the budget and toward the conscious spending plan. A budget looks backward at where your money went. A spending plan looks forward at where you want it to go. Ramit breaks this down into 4 simple buckets: fixed costs, 50 to 60%, rent, utilities, debt, and groceries; investments, 10%, your future self's paycheck; savings, 5 to 10%, for big purchases like vacations or a house; and guilt-free spending, 20 to 35%. This is the fun money. The magic happens in that last bucket. Once your fixed costs are covered and your investments are automated, the money left over is yours to blow, completely, without a single moment of guilt.
You aren't saving for a rainy day, you are spending on a sunny day because the system has already accounted for the rain. Psychologically, this shifts us from a defensive posture to an offensive one. When you stop saying, I can't afford that, and start saying, I choose not to spend on that because I value this more, you regain control. You stop being a victim of your bank account and start being the architect of your lifestyle. It's about identifying your money dial, that one category, be it fitness, convenience, or socializing, that brings you the most juice, and turning it all the way up to 10. Philosophically, this chapter teaches us that money is a limited resource, but our desires are infinite. By making conscious trade-offs, we stop living a lukewarm life where we are kind of saving and kind of spending, and start living a rich life where our bank account is a reflection of our deepest values. Key takeaway: frugality isn't about spending less, it's about spending better by prioritizing your passions and ignoring the pressure to care about everything else.
Chapter 5: Save While You Sleep, The Power of Automation. We like to think of ourselves as disciplined, rational beings who can make good choices every single day. But the truth is, we are tired, we are stressed, we have decision fatigue from choosing what to eat, what to wear, and which email to answer first. If your financial success depends on you waking up every morning and deciding to be good with money, you are eventually going to fail. Willpower is a battery that drains. A system is a machine that never sleeps. The core idea here is to design a financial pipeline that removes you from the equation. Imagine your paycheck as a river. In a typical life, that river flows into a lake, your checking account, and then just sits there until you manually scoop out buckets for rent, groceries, or savings. Usually, by the time you reach for the savings bucket, the lake is already dry. Ramit's solution is to build a series of pipes. The moment your paycheck hits your account, the pumps turn on. A portion is siphoned off to your 401k. Another stream flows to your Roth IRA. A third goes to your high-yield savings for that trip to Japan, and your bills are paid automatically. This is the set-it-and-forget-it lifestyle. The beauty of this system is that it eliminates guilt-tripping yourself. When you go out for a nice dinner and see the bill, you don't have to wonder if you can afford it. You know you can because the pipes have already moved the money for your future self before you even saw the balance. You are left with a pure number in your checking account that is yours to spend. Psychologically, automation solves the problem of loss aversion. Humans hate the feeling of losing money. When we manually move $500 from our checking to a savings account, our brain registers it as a loss. The balance went down. But when that money is moved automatically before we ever possess it in our minds, we never feel the sting. We simply adapt our lifestyle to the remaining balance. Philosophically, this is about humility. It's admitting that you aren't always going to be your best self. By automating your finances, you are making your best self the default setting. You are deciding that your long-term dreams are too important to be left to the whims of your Tuesday afternoon mood. Once this system is running, you stop managing your money and start observing your wealth grow. You reclaim the mental bandwidth you used to spend on worrying about due dates and transfer limits, and you can redirect that energy toward your career, your family, or your passions. Key takeaway: your willpower is a finite resource. By automating your financial flow, you ensure that your goals are met by default rather than by effort.
Chapter 6: The Myth of Financial Expertise. Why you don't need a pro. In our culture, we tend to believe that if something is complicated, we should hire an expert. If your car breaks down, you go to a mechanic. If your sink leaks, you call a plumber. So naturally, when it comes to the complex world of the stock market, we assume we need a high-priced financial advisor in a tailored suit to guide us. We think these pros have access to a secret room of information that we don't. The core idea of this chapter is a hard truth. Most financial experts are not only unnecessary, they are often a net negative for your wealth. The financial industry is built on a smoke and mirrors foundation.
They use jargon like alpha, beta, and proprietary algorithms to make you feel small, so you'll feel comfortable handing them a 1% or 2% fee to manage your money. On the surface, 1% sounds like nothing, but because of the way fees compound over decades, that tiny percentage can actually eat up to 50% of your total lifetime gains. You take 100% of the risk, but the expert takes half the reward regardless of whether they actually make you money. Ramit points out a staggering statistic. Over a 15-year period, more than 90% of professional fund managers fail to beat the market, the average return of all stocks. If the people who do this for 80 hours a week can't beat the average, why are we paying them? The alternative is index funds. Instead of trying to find the one winning stock, which is like finding a needle in a haystack, you simply buy the entire haystack. Index funds are low-cost, automated, and mathematically proven to outperform almost every expert over the long term. Psychologically, we struggle with this because we are hardwired to believe that more effort equals more reward. We think that if we study the news and pick the right sectors, we should do better than average. But the stock market is one of the few places where laziness is a competitive advantage. The less you do, the less you tinker, and the less you pay in fees, the richer you become. Philosophically, this chapter is about self-reliance. It's about realizing that no one will care about your money as much as you do. When you stop looking for a guru to save you, you reclaim your power. You transition from a prey mindset, waiting to be sold a product, to a predator mindset, where you understand the math and choose the most efficient path to growth. Key takeaway: Wall Street experts rarely beat the market average. By choosing low-cost index funds over high-fee advisors, you keep your hard-earned profits for yourself.
Chapter 7. Investing. It's not just for rich people. The word investing often conjures images of mahogany desks and glowing green computer screens. But in reality, investing is simply the act of putting your money to work so you don't have to. If you save, you have what you put in. If you invest, your money breeds, creating money babies that eventually grow up and start working for you too. The core idea of this chapter is asset allocation. Think of your investment portfolio like a meal. The assets are your ingredients. You have stocks, high flavor, high heat, but can burn the dish if you aren't careful. Bonds, the stable base like rice or bread that keeps things from getting too wild. And international/REITs, the spices that add variety. Most people spend their lives trying to find the perfect stock, the salt that will make them rich. But research shows that 90% of your returns are determined by the mix of these ingredients, not the individual pieces. Ramit introduces a simple, tiered approach to building this portfolio. Target date funds, these are the all-in-one meals. You pick the year you want to retire, and the fund automatically manages the mix of stocks and bonds for you. As you get older, it gets safer. It is the ultimate set-it-and-forget-it tool for people who want to spend 0 minutes a month thinking about the market. The multi-asset class portfolio, for those who want a bit more control, you can build your own mix using index funds, as we discussed in Chapter 6. Psychologically, the hardest part of this chapter is accepting that boring is better. We're wired for excitement. We want the hot tip. But in investing, excitement is usually a precursor to loss. The most successful investors are the ones who can tolerate being average year after year. While everyone else is panicked about a news headline, the rich life investor is at the movies, knowing their diversified portfolio is built to weather any storm. Philosophically, this is about time over timing. You don't need to time the market to win, you just need time in the market. By diversifying your assets, you're essentially betting on the human race. You're betting that over the long haul, companies will continue to innovate, people will continue to buy goods, and the global economy will grow. It's a move from the anxiety of gambling to the quiet confidence of ownership. When you own a piece of the world's greatest companies through a diversified index, you are no longer a worker bee in the economy. You are the one who owns the hive. Key takeaway? Your investment success depends on your asset mix rather than individual stock picks. By using simple tools like target date funds, you can capture the growth of the entire market with zero stress.
Chapter 8: Maintenance and Growth, Feeding the Machine. Once you've built your financial machine, there is a dangerous temptation to either obsess over it or ignore it entirely. Some people check their balances every 3 hours, riding the emotional roller coaster of every market dip. Others set it up and never look back, even as their life circumstances change. The rich life approach is about stewardship. It's about tending to your garden just enough to keep it healthy without letting it consume your life. The core idea here is two-pronged: rebalancing your portfolio and increasing your top-line income. Imagine you decided on a mix of 80% stocks and 20% bonds. If the stock market has a fantastic year, your portfolio might shift to 90% stocks. On paper, you're richer, but you're also more exposed. If the market crashes tomorrow, you'll lose much more than you planned. Rebalancing is the counterintuitive act of selling a bit of what's doing well to buy more of what's lagging. It forces you to do the one thing every investor knows they should do but rarely does: buy low and sell high. It's a mathematical way to remove emotion from the equation. But maintenance is only half the battle. Ramit argues that while there is a limit to how much you can cut from your spending, there is no limit to how much you can earn. Most financial advice focuses on the save side, skipping the latte, using coupons, being small. Ramit pushes us toward the earn side. This means learning the invisible scripts of negotiation. Whether it's a $5,000 raise at your current job or starting a side business that brings in an extra $1,000 a month, these big wins move the needle far more than saving $10 a month on your phone bill ever could. Psychologically, this is about shifting from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. In a scarcity mindset, the pie is only so big, and you must fight for every crumb. In an abundance mindset, you realize you can bake a bigger pie. When you increase your income and keep your automation system running, the gap between what you earn and what you spend widens exponentially. That gap is where your freedom lives. Philosophically, this chapter teaches us that wealth is a practice, not a destination. You don't get rich and then stop. You maintain the systems that keep you there. It's the difference between someone who goes on a crash diet and someone who adopts a lifelong habit of healthy eating. By checking in on your system once or twice a year, you ensure that the machine is still heading toward your version of a rich life. Key takeaway: real wealth is built by managing the risks you have and aggressively expanding your ability to earn. By rebalancing annually and negotiating for your worth, you supercharge your path to freedom.
Chapter 9: A Rich Life, Beyond the Numbers. We often treat being rich as a mathematical finish line, a specific number in a bank account that, once reached, will suddenly grant us permission to be happy. We spend decades crunching numbers, but we spend almost no time defining what those numbers are actually for. The tragedy of many successful people is that they become rich in currency but remain poor in time, relationships, and purpose. The core idea of this final chapter is that money is a tool for a meaningful existence, not the goal itself. In this stage of the journey, Ramit takes us beyond the spreadsheets to confront the big wins of life: buying a home, getting married, and handling family expectations. These aren't just financial transactions, they are emotional milestones. For example, we are often told that buying a house is the best investment you'll ever make. Ramit challenges this invisible script with cold, hard math, showing that when you factor in maintenance, taxes, and interest, a house is often more of a forced savings plan or a lifestyle choice than a wealth generator. A rich life means having the courage to run the numbers yourself, rather than following the herd. But even more than real estate or weddings, this chapter is about relationship management. Money is the leading cause of friction in most households. By implementing the systems we've discussed, the automation, the conscious spending, the joint rich life goals, you remove the friction. You stop fighting about the $20 dinner and start dreaming about the $20,000 anniversary trip. Psychologically, the final hurdle is overcoming the expert trap.
Once you have money, people will come out of the woodwork to tell you how to spend it, save it, or give it away. Your parents might want you to be conservative, your friends might want you to be flashy. A rich life requires the psychological strength to say no to other people's definitions of success so you can say yes to your own. Philosophically, this is the synthesis of the journey. We started by taming our credit cards and ended by taming our souls. We've learned that wealth isn't about having the most, it's about needing the least amount of worry. A rich life is one where you can use your money to buy back your time, support the causes you believe in, and take care of the people you love. It's the transition from being a servant to your finances to being the master of your destiny. When you reach this level, the numbers on the screen become secondary to the experiences in your life. You realize that you didn't just learn how to be rich, you learned how to live. Key takeaway. The ultimate goal of financial systems is to stop thinking about money. A rich life is defined by your ability to live according to your values without being held back by financial anxiety or social pressure.
Conclusion: the courage to live rich. We have traveled from the granular world of credit card interest rates to the high-altitude philosophy of defining a life well lived. Along the way, we've dismantled the myths that keep most people stagnant. We've learned that wealth isn't a mystery reserved for the elite, nor is it a reward for a lifetime of deprivation. It is, quite simply, the result of a well-designed system and the psychological courage to follow through. The deeper message of Ramit Sethi's work is that permission is a myth. You don't need permission from a financial advisor to start investing. You don't need permission from your bank to stop paying fees. And you certainly don't need permission from society to spend your money on things that others might find frivolous. The only person who can grant you a rich life is you. As we reflect on this intellectual journey, consider the cultural impact of this shift. We live in a world that profits from our confusion and our guilt. When we are confused, we buy products we don't need. When we feel guilty, we stay passive. By taking control of your financial infrastructure, you are performing a quiet act of rebellion. You are choosing clarity over complexity and agency over anxiety. To bring this into the real world, let us distill our journey into 5 guiding principles. The 85% solution. It is always better to get started with an okay plan today than to wait for a perfect plan that never happens. Perfection is the enemy of wealth. Focus on the big wins. Stop agonizing over $5 lattes. Spend that mental energy on the $50,000 questions, your investment fees, your asset allocation, and your salary negotiations. Automation is freedom. If you have to remember to be smart with your money, you've already lost. Build a system that makes your success inevitable. Spend extravagantly on what you love. Frugality is about trade-offs, not restriction. Identify your money dials and turn them all the way up while ruthlessly cutting everything else. Money is a tool, not a destination. The goal isn't to have the biggest number in the bank. The goal is to have a life that is rich in experiences, relationships, and peace of mind. As we close this narrative, take a look at your own life, not your bank balance, but your life. If you had the systems in place to handle the boring parts of your finances while you slept, what would you do with that extra mental space? What passion project would you start? What trip would you take? Who would you help? The rich life is waiting for you, but it won't be handed to you. It's built one automated transfer, one negotiated fee, and one conscious choice at a time. The system is ready. The path is clear. Now, the only question left is, what does your rich life look like?